He will get countered by Donaire's left. When you reach against Donaire, like Victor Archinian did, you give him a chance to land a big counter shot. Marquez wants to get on the inside where he can work the body of Donaire, especially early in the fight. Donaire has a 3-inch height advantage. He should use it. And Nonito wants big fights, as I mentioned, and he could look past Marquez and have a costly lapse in concentration. The Donaire left is powerful. Tonight he'll deliver it differently because he announced to us he's going to fight the whole fight as a lefty.
That's right. Because he feels that as he moves up in weight, if he can master the southpaw style, because he's naturally left-handed, he writes with his left hand, but started boxing the other way. If he can master that southpaw stance, it could really be effective for him as he goes up into higher weights.
And it's fascinating that he's actually going to experiment with this in a fight. He trained all the time as a lefty, so we fully expect him to come out in that stance for this fight, and he also believes it'll be a surprise against Marquez.
All right, let's size him up as we go to the tail of the tape. 12 rounds for the WBA Super Flyweight Interim World Championship, Hernan Marquez.
The numbers that jump out at you are very important in this fight. The height and reach advantage of Donaire. He fights tall. He knows how to use height and reach. That's what makes him so difficult for these smaller fighters to beat, and any fighter in any weight class he's in.
And now the notable unified rules for tonight's fights.
No standing 8. There is no 3 knockdown rule. The referee or doctor can stop the fight and cannot be saved by the bell in any round. And if there is an accidental foul, like a clash of heads, before the end of round 4, it will be no decision. After the end of round 4, they would go to the scorecards.
San Juan, Puerto Rico, and we're set for the WBA Interim Super Flyweight World Championship. Nonito Donaire versus Hernan Marquez. Let's get the formal introductions from our ring announcer, Jimmy Lennon Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and welcome. Y a todos mis amigos boricuas, bienvenidos aficionados al box a San Juan, Puerto Rico. Tenemos una gran noche de boxeo. We welcome you to the islands of Puerto Rico from the city of San Juan. We present a big night of action brought to you by Top Rank Incorporated, NPR Best Boxing, in association with Corona, cpuertorico.com, and Showtime. Ahora presentando un campeonato mundial. At this time, we present a championship attraction sanctioned by the WBA President Gilberto Mendoza, Supervisor Miguel Prado, presentando a los jueces. And now introducing our judges at ringside. From Puerto Rico, Raul Nieves. Also from Puerto Rico, Cesar Ramos. And from Panama, Ignacio Robles. And our referee in charge, presentando al referee, Roberto Ramirez. All right, fans, here we go. 12 rounds of boxing for the Interim Super Flyweight Championship of the world. Bien, amigos, presentando un combate a 12 asaltos por el Campeonato Mundial Interino de la AMB Peso Super Mosca. Introducing to you first the challenger on my right, fighting out of the blue corner, wearing black trunks. He weighed in at 115 pounds. Presentando en la esquina azul con un peso de 115 libras. From Empalme, Sonora, Mexico, his record stands at 25 wins, 1 loss, with 18 wins coming by way of knockout. Tiene un récord de 25 victorias y una derrota con 18 ganadas por knockout. He is ranked the number 9 flyweight contender, clasificado número 9 peso mosca de la AMB. Introducing the hard-hitting challenger, presentando al retador Hernan Tyson Marquez. And his opponent across the ring, the champion on my left, fighting out of the red corner, wearing yellow trunks with red trim. He weighed in at 114 1/2 pounds. Su oponente en la esquina roja, pesando 114 libras y medio. From San Mateo, California, by way of Bohol and General Santos City in the Philippines, he is the former IBF flyweight world champion with a record of 23 wins and 1 loss. He has 15 wins coming by way of knockout. Su récord, 23 victorias y 1 derrota con 15 ganadas por knockout. Aquí está el campeón mundial interino de la AMB peso super mosca. Here is the current interim WBA super flyweight champion of the world, introducing the Filipino Flash, Nonito Donaire.
Okay.
Once again, our referee in charge, Roberto Ramirez.
Uno. Just one. Hey, Robert. Done. Okay. I already gave you the instruction at the dressing room. I want to be watching for the very clean fight. Ya yo le di las instrucciones en el camerino. Quiero que esta pelea sea limpia. Obedezca mis instrucciones. Okay? Good fight.
And there's Rachel Donaire, Nonito's wife, a former member of the U.S. national Taekwondo team. She's also an entrepreneur, sells her version of these beautiful handbags. Nonito ready to fight at 115 for the final time. Marquez, the challenger, feels that if he can win this fight, he can always go back down to 112 and be unstoppable and be a 2-time world champion. Round number 1.
Nonito Donaire came out as a lefty and got hit with the right hook the first 5 seconds, so that had to shock him a little bit. Now remember, we said all this before, Nonito Donaire has never fought a full round even as a lefty. He's shown us this in spots, and he trained the whole time as a lefty and said, I am going to be committed to this. See how he does.
And what's the biggest drawback for a fighter that tries to turn over and fight as a southpaw?
I think it's more defense than it is offense. You know, he even said it. He said, I was surprised when sparring that I was able to defensively see where the punches were coming from because you're looking at it from a different angle. And of course, the left hand, and there it is from Donaire, is still his big weapon, even though he throws it as a hook when he's a righty.
Donaire telling us that he's in an experimental phase, and he wants to take this opportunity. It didn't seem as if he was really concerned with Marquez fighting a younger, smaller man. So he told us that he wanted to experiment with the southpaw style, and he wanted to commit to it. We asked him, if things got tight in there, what would you do?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and he said, I'm sticking with it. And, you know, he said he did it to challenge himself. And, you know, I'm sure Hernan Marquez would have something to say about that, saying, you know, you don't need an artificial challenge. I'm here. And Marquez is a very competent fighter. Yes, it's true he's stepping up in weight, but he has fought, as I mentioned, 8 times before at the 115-pound limit.
Ironically, Marquez, who fights as a southpaw, is a natural right-hander.
Yeah. Now there's the straight left hand of Donaire. He is not shy about throwing that punch so far. He hasn't landed it, but he has thrown it. And he says the power with it from this stance is considerable.
Donaire coming off a 3rd round KO. He used the left uppercut against Manuel Vargas on February 13th. Vargas was brought in on short notice after Gerson Guerrero failed an eye exam the Wednesday before the fight. Nice straight left hand now by Marquez.
You know, I'm going to cast an early vote on this left-handed thing, and I'm only going to cast it, you know, tenuously because you never know. One of the dangers of this is that Donaire, when he's throwing punches, is falling in more than he does from his normal stance, and he's getting hit with some punches by Marquez that I don't think he'd be getting hit with if he was a righty, but we'll see how it plays out. And Marquez, for his part, has been very workmanlike.
Marquez made his U.S. debut in his last fight. Prior to it, he was undefeated, and he lost a 10-round decision versus lefty Richie Mafrana. Oh, beautiful right hand by Donaire, and that backed up Marquez.
Time.
And the end of round 1.
Early on in the round, just at the beginning, Marquez kind of clipped him with a right hook. It wasn't dramatic, but it was as if to say, okay, you're a lefty, but I can land this right hook from time to time, and Marquez did it very early in the fight. But later on, Marquez throwing a right and a left to the body, so he's in this fight.
All right, Gus Johnson along with Al Bernstein and partner Nonito Donaire is one of the slickest and one of the most up-and-coming fighters in the world right now.
Yeah, most people have him ranked in the top 10 pound for pound. When I made my top 10 pound for pound list for another bunch of magazines, I had him in the top 10. He is a very skilled fighter, and at these weight categories that he fights at, Gus, his physical stature gives him a big edge.
And don't forget, coming up, our main event as Juan Manuel Lopez puts his WBO title on the line against a tough Filipino by the name of Bernabe Concepcion, who has adopted the Manny Pacquiao style.